Adrian Cole had what most men only dreamed of: luxury cars, a penthouse that kissed the clouds, and a reputation that made competitors lower their eyes when he walked into the room. But for all the noise of his world, stock tickers, clinking glasses, and congratulatory handshakes, his nights were deafeningly quiet. On a crisp autumn morning, the mirrored elevator of Cole Tower swallowed him whole, shooting him toward the 45th floor. At 38, Adrian was a self-made millionaire, CEO of Cole & Partners, and the youngest man in the state to own a controlling stake in a financial firm. His tailored charcoal suit fit like armor. Every step was purposeful, every look calculated. "Mr. Cole, the board is waiting," his assistant murmured as soon as the door slid open. The meeting was textbook Adrian. Another acquisition sealed, another competitor swallowed whole. Applause followed him out of the boardroom, but he barely heard it anymore. Deals were trophies. They gleamed for a moment before collecting dust. Back in his glass-walled office, the city stretched out beneath him like a chessboard. He was halfway through skimming quarterly reports when his personal phone lit up. Adrian frowned. Few people had this number. "Mr. Cole, this is Silver Pines Care Home. We thought you should know. Your uncle, Daniel Cole, has been asking for you." Adrian's pen froze mid-stroke. Uncle Daniel was more than family. He was the man who'd taught Adrian to fish before teaching him to tie a tie, the only one who never saw him as a bank account in the making. Yet Adrian hadn't visited in nearly 2 months. The voice on the other end was gentle. "Nothing urgent, just a medication change, but he'd love to see you." When the call ended, Adrian reached into his desk drawer. Beneath a pile of contracts lay an old photograph, 10-year-old Adrian on a rickety dock, holding a fishing rod alongside his smiling uncle. It was before the firm, before the tailored suits and locked jaw, before he learned how cold the world could be. He pressed the intercom. "Clear my schedule for tomorrow afternoon." The next day, his obsidian-black Aston Martin rolled into the modest parking lot of Silver Pines, looking like it had taken a wrong turn from another world. Inside, the scent of lavender and something faintly medicinal lingered in the air. "Mr. Cole," the receptionist greeted, a warm smile softening her features. "Your uncle is in the garden, with Amira." "Amira? One of our care assistants. She's been wonderful with him." Adrian followed a winding path toward the garden, the crunch of gravel under his shoes. Then, laughter. His uncle's laughter, unguarded and alive. It was a sound Adrian hadn't heard in years. And there she was, Amira, in simple blue scrubs, her hands steady on Daniel's arm as they walked beneath an old oak. Her dark curls caught the sunlight. Her smile was warm and uncalculated. She looked up, meeting Adrian's gaze without the faintest flicker of recognition. For the first time in years, Adrian Cole felt seen, not for his fortune, but for something he couldn't yet name. Adrian slowed his pace, not wanting to interrupt whatever had just made his uncle laugh like that. "And I told the bank manager, son, I might be old, but I'm not senile enough to think that's a fair interest rate," Daniel finished, his eyes sparkling with mischief. Amira's smile faded into a polite professional expression as she looked up at him. There was no flicker of recognition, no weighing of his worth, just a man visiting his uncle. "Uncle," Adrian said, stepping forward and leaning down to hug the older man gently. "You came," Daniel said with a satisfied nod. "I was just telling Amira about that monster bass we caught at Lake Meredith." "You've been holding out on me, Mr. Daniel," Amira teased. "Never mentioned your nephew was a fisherman." "I haven't fished in years," Adrian corrected. "That's a shame," she said simply, without flattery or agenda. "Mr. Daniel talks about those trips like they were the best days of his life." A flicker of guilt passed through Adrian. They had been the best days, before life became a relentless climb. "Well," Amira said, brushing invisible dust from her sleeve, "I'll let you two catch up. Mr. Daniel, remember your walking stick if you get tired." She turned to Adrian with a courteous smile. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Cole." As she walked away, Adrian found himself watching the way she stopped to kneel beside an elderly woman in a wheelchair, speaking at eye level, her face open and attentive. "She's something special," Daniel murmured, catching Adrian's gaze. "The care assistant? Competent," Daniel chuckled. "Adrian, she's the only one here who treats me like a human being instead of a job duty. She brings me books, remembers my coffee just right, listens to my stories like they matter. Adrian helped Daniel to a bench under the oak's dappled shade. I should come more often, he admitted. Yes, you should, Daniel said, no accusation in his voice, only quiet truth. But I understand. Busy running that company. The company you built, Adrian reminded him. I built it to protect the family, not to replace it, Daniel countered. Your aunt would be heartbroken to see how closed off you've become. Adrian flinched. His aunt had died when he was 16, and the loss had hit them both like a tidal wave. I'm not closed off. I'm focused. On what? Making more money? You already have more than you can spend in 2 lifetimes. Before Adrian could answer, his phone vibrated. He glanced at it. His CFO. I need to take this, Adrian said, stepping away to handle a minor issue that could have waited. By the time he returned, Daniel was in animated conversation with Amira again. She had brought him tea and was showing him something on a tablet. Look at this, Adrian, Daniel called. Amira's community garden project. They're growing vegetables for the food bank. Amira's cheeks colored faintly. It's just a small thing my friends and I started. She's being modest, Daniel insisted. She works here full-time, runs that garden, and she's taking classes to be a nurse. That's impressive, Adrian said, the sincerity in his voice surprising even himself. Just trying to make a difference, Amira shrugged. She glanced at her watch. I should get back. Mr. Daniel has physical therapy in 30 minutes, Mr. Cole. Adrian, he corrected automatically. She gave a polite nod that didn't quite reach her eyes. Adrian. And then she was gone again, moving with quiet purpose through the garden. Daniel smirked. She doesn't like you much. Adrian blinked. Why wouldn't she? She doesn't even know me. Exactly, Daniel said, his grin widening. You're just another rich relative who rarely visits. That's ridiculous, Adrian muttered, but his eyes still followed the spot where Amira had disappeared. For the rest of the afternoon, he stayed with Daniel, listening to stories about other residents, the daily rhythms of Silver Pines. But even as he nodded along, part of his mind kept circling back to Amira. The way she'd looked at him without calculation, the spark in her voice when she spoke of the garden, and the strange pull he couldn't explain. When Daniel's therapy session began, Adrian left the garden, passing the reception desk where Amira was updating files. Excuse me, Amira. She looked up, eyebrows lifting in mild surprise. I wanted to thank you for taking such good care of my uncle. I'm just doing my job, she said softly, but then added, he's a wonderful man. Yes, Adrian agreed. He is. He hesitated. That garden. Your uncle seemed proud of it. Tell me more. Her face lit up with genuine passion as she described it. An empty lot turned green oasis, rows of tomatoes, herbs, peppers, children learning to plant. Do you need funding? Adrian asked automatically. Her smile dimmed. We're fine, thanks. Money helps, but hands in the dirt matter more. Adrian wasn't used to people refusing his offers of money. He left the care home both irritated and intrigued, and for the first time in years, he was already planning when he'd return. The next afternoon, Adrian Cole's Aston Martin slid into the parking lot of Silver Pines once again. This time, the receptionist's knowing smile followed him as he stepped inside. Back so soon, Mr. Cole? She teased gently. Adrian, he corrected. And yes, is my uncle in the garden? Not today. Amira's leading the art class. Your uncle's there. Art class. The words didn't fit the Adrian Cole who spent his days signing contracts and closing deals. Still, he followed the directions. The room was sunlit, with big windows looking out over the garden. Tables were scattered with paintbrushes, jars of cloudy water, and paper. Elderly residents bent over their work, tongues peeking out in concentration. Near the window, Daniel sat hunched over a watercolor, dabbing paint in broad, shaky strokes. Amira moved between tables, offering tips, her voice low and warm. She wore the same simple scrubs, her hair tied back, but she lit the room in a way even the sunlight seemed to envy. She spotted Adrian and raised an eyebrow. Back so soon, Mr. Cole? I promised my uncle we'd go fishing, Adrian said, lifting the rod he carried. And it's Adrian. The class ends in 15 minutes, she said. You can join while you wait. We've got a spare seat. Adrian hesitated. Him, sitting down to paint with seniors? It was absurd. but his uncle had already seen him and was waving him over. I haven't painted since I was a kid, Adrian admitted, sliding into the chair beside Daniel. No time like the present, Amira said, placing paper and paint in front of him. We're painting memories today, somewhere special. Daniel gestured to his own paper. Lake Meredith. Remember that cabin? Adrian did. The smell of the lake, the creak of the dock, the laughter, his aunts and his uncles drifting over the water. He picked up the brush awkwardly, painting the dock. The lines were uneven, the colors clumsy, but as the image took shape, so did something else, an ache he hadn't felt in years. When the class ended, Amira collected the papers. We'll frame them next week, she told the residents. Daniel rose slowly with his walker. Ready for some fishing, my boy? Absolutely. Adrian turned to Amira. Would you like to join us? The invitation slipped out before he could stop it. She blinked. That's thoughtful, but I have other residents to attend to. Maybe another time. As they walked toward the pond, Daniel chuckled. Barking up the wrong tree there. What are you talking about? You're interested in her. Adrian felt heat creep up his neck. I was just being polite. In 38 years, you've never invited anyone to share your personal time just to be polite. At the pond, Adrian baited the hooks, casting his line into the still water. Daniel watched him for a moment, then said, She's not like the women you usually choose. Do you even know them? Or do they just fit the mold? Beautiful, connected, strategic? Adrian didn't answer. You know, Daniel continued, your aunt was a waitress when I met her. Adrian turned sharply. I thought she came from a banking family. That's the story your parents liked, Daniel said with a smile. Truth is, she served me coffee and pie after a bad day. By the time I left that diner, I knew she was special. The lines tugged in Adrian's chest. He glanced at his uncle's weathered hands on the fishing rod. Maybe, just maybe, history was repeating itself. By late afternoon, the sun had begun to soften, casting long golden streaks over the pond. The water was calm, only broken by the occasional ripple of fish beneath the surface. Daniel sat contentedly on the bench, line in the water, as Adrian watched the float bob gently. They didn't catch anything, but neither seemed to mind. Grandpa used to say fishing wasn't about the fish, Daniel murmured. It was about being still enough to hear yourself think. Adrian smiled faintly. And what are you thinking about? You, Daniel said without looking up. You've been different lately. Not in a bad way, just different. Adrian didn't answer immediately. His mind drifted to Amira, the sound of her laugh, the way she'd knelt beside that woman in the wheelchair, the spark in her eyes when she talked about the garden. Maybe I am, he admitted. It's been a while since something, or someone, made me stop and look around. Daniel cast him a sidelong glance. Careful, that someone looks like the kind who doesn't fall for bank accounts. I noticed, Adrian said dryly. When Daniel's energy began to fade, Adrian helped him back to his room. On the way, they passed the garden where Amira was helping an elderly man with walking exercises. She noticed them and straightened. Leaving already? She asked. Uncle got tired, Adrian said. But we had a good time. Catch anything? Just memories, he said before he could stop himself. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. Those are the best kind. He wanted to keep talking, maybe ask her to join them for dinner, but his phone vibrated in his pocket. Victoria. He silenced it without looking. Important business? Amira asked lightly, though something in her expression closed off. Not as important as this conversation, he replied. Her eyebrows lifted slightly at that. I looked into your community garden, Adrian said. The irrigation system isn't efficient. I could help. You researched me? She asked, the faintest hint of suspicion in her tone. My uncle mentioned it. I was curious. And you immediately thought of throwing money at it, she said, not unkindly but directly. Not just money, I could help personally. That drew a flicker of surprise from her. You? In a garden? Is it so hard to believe? Honestly, yes, she said, glancing at his perfectly tailored suit. Maybe there's more to me than you think, Adrian replied, holding her gaze. She considered him for a moment, then said, We have a volunteer day Saturday, 8 to noon. If you're serious, come, but leave your checkbook at home. Before he could answer, another staff member called her name. She walked away without looking back, leaving Adrian standing in the fading light, already rearranging his Saturday schedule. Saturday morning, Adrian arrived at the community garden wearing the most casual clothes he owned, dark jeans and a rolled-sleeve shirt. They still looked expensive, but he'd left the Aston Martin parked around the corner to avoid attracting attention. The garden was alive with activity. Children chased each other between rows, volunteers dug into the soil, and a group of teenagers hammered together a compost bin. Then he heard it, her laugh. Amira emerged from a shed carrying trays of seedlings. She paused mid-step when she saw him. "You came," she said, surprise softening into something warmer. "I said I would," he replied, holding up a coffee cup. "Thought you might need this." "Thanks," she said, taking it from him. "How's your uncle?" "Better. His fever broke." Adrian reached for one of the trays. "Where do these go?" She led him to an empty bed and demonstrated how to plant tomatoes. His first attempt was awkward, the plant leaning sideways, and she hid a smile. "Not bad for a beginner," she teased. By the fourth plant, his hands were dirty, his knees smudged, and for the first time in years, Adrian didn't care. He wasn't thinking about meetings, mergers, or market reports, only the feel of the earth between his fingers and the easy rhythm of working beside her. The morning passed in a blur of planting, watering, and wiping sweat from his brow. Adrian had learned how to plant tomatoes without breaking the stems, how to space peppers just right, and how to keep a strawberry patch from being overrun by weeds. Around him, the garden buzzed with life, children giggling, neighbors exchanging recipes, teenagers teaching younger kids how to mulch. It was nothing like the sterile, competitive boardrooms he knew. Here, no one cared about quarterly earnings. The only numbers that mattered were how many seedlings took root, how many baskets of produce would make it to the food bank. "How did all this start?" he asked as they moved on to a row of pepper plants. 3 years ago, Amira said, adjusting her gloves. "This was just an abandoned lot. My sister Maya and I grew up 2 blocks away and always dreamed of turning it into something green. When the city offered small grants for community projects, we applied. And built all this in 3 years." Adrian glanced around, genuinely impressed. "With a lot of help," she said, nodding toward the volunteers. "It's not just our project, it's the community's." "You sound proud," he said. "I am," she admitted. "Last year, we donated almost 2,000 pounds of vegetables to local families." He looked at her, the sunlight catching in her curls. "This might be more important than anything I've ever done in business." Amira stopped, studying him with a searching gaze. "You really mean that?" "I do." Before she could respond, a teenage volunteer ran up, breathless. "Amira, the irrigation system's leaking again." "I'll be right there," she said, handing Adrian the last tray of peppers. "Can you finish these?" He grinned. "I think I can handle it." For the next hour, he worked alone, surprisingly focused on the task. Dirt smeared his shirt, the sun reddened the back of his neck, but he felt more satisfied than he had after closing deals worth millions. When lunch was called, the volunteers gathered around a long table shaded by an old tree. Dishes of homemade salads, sandwiches, and pitchers of lemonade appeared as if by magic. Adrian hesitated, empty-handed, but Amira pressed a plate into his hands. "First-timers get a free pass," she said with a teasing smile. "Next time, bring something to share." "Next time," he repeated, liking the way it sounded. They just started eating when a woman about Amira's age approached. "Maya, this is Adrian Cole," Amira said, introducing her sister. "So you're the one I've been hearing about," Maya said, eyes narrowing in playful suspicion. "The millionaire who suddenly spends every afternoon at Silver Pines during my sister's shift?" "Maya," Amira warned. "What? I'm just saying what everyone's thinking." Maya turned to Adrian. "You're planting peppers here on a Saturday when you could be on a yacht. That's, interesting." "I wanted to help," Adrian said evenly. "And it has nothing to do with my sister?" He hesitated. "Only to the extent that she inspires me." Maya's expression softened, though her tone stayed protective. "She's the best person I know. Don't mess with her heart." "I'm not here to play games," Adrian said quietly. Before Maya could reply, Amira returned from helping another volunteer. "Ready to go?" she asked. "I'm stopping by Silver Pines to bring your uncle some fresh bread." "Let's go together," Adrian offered. The drive was easy, Amira telling stories about the early struggles of the garden. Broken fences, stolen tools, neighbors who didn't believe it would work. When they arrived, Daniel's face lit up at the sight of them. As Adrian watched Amira listen to his uncle's stories, her hand resting lightly on the old man's arm, he realized the truth was no longer avoidable. He didn't just want to help her garden, he wanted to be part of her world. Over the next week, a quiet rhythm began to form. Mornings still belonged to Cole and Partners. Meetings, contracts, the endless demands of clients. But afternoons often found Adrian at Silver Pines, timing his visits so they overlapped with Amira's shifts. Saturdays were for the garden, where he was no longer the outsider in clean jeans, but someone whose hands were just as dirt-stained as everyone else's. Each day he learned something new about her. She lived with her younger sister. She sang in a community choir. And she had a weakness for chocolate chip cookies the kitchen staff sometimes baked just for her. Daniel, of course, noticed everything and seemed determined to play matchmaker. One Thursday afternoon, Adrian arrived to find his uncle in bed, a light fever making his cheeks pink. Nothing serious, the nurse assured him. We're monitoring him. Adrian sat by the bed until Amira appeared with a tray. His favorite tea, she said softly, setting it down. How's he doing? The same, she replied, her voice gentle. But it's normal to worry about people we love. She rested a hand on his shoulder, a small gesture, but it startled him with its warmth. I should have been here more, Adrian admitted. You're here now, she said simply, meeting his eyes before turning to leave. He called after her. See you Saturday at the garden? 8 a.m. sharp. Wear something you don't mind ruining, she replied with a hint of a smile. If you own such a thing. Saturday morning was bright and warm. Adrian arrived early, in jeans already scuffed from past work days. The garden was alive, children darting between rows, the air scented with basil and damp soil. Amira emerged from the shed, hair tied back in a bandana, carrying trays of seedlings. You came early, she said, sounding pleased despite herself. I brought coffee, he said, handing her a cup. 1 sugar, no cream. I remembered. She looked surprised but said nothing, leading him to a bed that needed planting. These are tomato seedlings. Space them about a foot apart. Watch how I do it. He followed her example. Dig, place, cover, water. By the 3rd plant, his technique had improved. By the 6th, they were working in sync, passing seedlings back and forth without needing to speak. As they worked, volunteers drifted by to chat. One older man told Adrian about the garden's first harvest. A teenager asked if he could help repair a fence later. Adrian found himself saying yes to everything. By lunchtime, his hands were blistered, his shirt clung to his back, and he felt good. Not the fleeting satisfaction of closing a deal, but something deeper. Under the old tree, the volunteers gathered to eat. This time, Adrian had brought fresh bread from a bakery near his office. Learning, Amira said with a small smile when she saw it. After they finished, she started gathering tools. Your uncle will be expecting you, she said. I can stay and help finish here, Adrian offered. She hesitated, then said, I was heading to Silver Pines myself. We could go together. The drive was quiet but comfortable. At Silver Pines, Daniel was waiting in the garden, chatting with another resident. His eyes lit up when he saw them. You two look like you've been working hard, he teased. Adrian smiled, but his attention kept drifting to Amira. How natural she looked here. How easily she fit into his uncle's world. Somewhere between the seedlings and the laughter under the old tree, Adrian realized it wasn't just her kindness or strength that drew him in. It was the way she made him want to be better. The following Monday, the polished marble floors of Cole and Partners felt colder than usual. You missed the board meeting Friday, Victoria Chambers said from the doorway of Adrian's office, her arms folded in that effortless way that managed to look both casual and calculating. Robert covered for me, Adrian replied, not looking up from his laptop. You've been distracted lately, she said, stepping inside uninvited. Delegating key meetings, leaving early. Some of the board is starting to wonder. Let them wonder. I'm just saying, she continued, leaning against his desk, this company thrives because you're focused. And if your attention is being pulled elsewhere, Victoria, Adrian cut her off, my personal life is my business. Her smile tightened. Of course. Just remember the charity gala next weekend. As major sponsors, the board expects both of us to be there. That afternoon, Adrian arrived at Silver Pines to find Amira helping his uncle into a wheelchair. Everything okay? Adrian asked quickly. Just a precaution, Amira said. Mr. Daniel had a minor fall. Doctor wants some x-rays. A fall? Why wasn't I told? It was minor, Daniel insisted. Didn't want to bother you. You're never a bother, Adrian said, his tone sharper than intended. They moved together down the hall, Amira pushing the chair, Adrian walking beside her. When the technician took Daniel away for scans, Adrian and Amira sat in the quiet waiting area. The gala's next weekend, he said after a pause. It's a fundraiser for children's education programs. Will you come with me? Amira looked surprised. I don't exactly have gala clothes. I could. Buy me something? She finished, her tone cooling. No, thank you. That's not what Adrian, she interrupted gently. What are we doing here? I enjoy spending time with you. And I with you, she admitted. But we come from different worlds. You run a financial empire. I work at a care home and volunteer in a garden. Your world is full of people like that woman who calls you on weekends. Victoria, isn't it? She's just a board member. Who seems to think she belongs by your side? Amira said softly. And maybe she's right. It's hard to bridge worlds this different. Before he could answer, Daniel returned, cheerfully declaring the scan boring. The moment slipped away, unspoken words hanging between them. That night, lying awake in his penthouse, Adrian replayed the conversation. Her doubts echoed louder than the city noise below. It wasn't just about the gala. It was about whether a man like him could truly belong in her life, or she in his. And for the first time in years, Adrian found himself wondering if winning someone's heart might be harder than building an empire. Thursday afternoon came with an unshakable tension. Adrian left the office early, trading his suit for jeans and a crisp button-down before heading to the small cafe near the garden. Amira was already there, seated at an outdoor table, her sundress catching the light. She was reading, so absorbed she didn't notice him until he spoke. Is this seat taken? She looked up, smiling. I was saving it for a millionaire, but I guess you'll do. They ordered sandwiches and iced tea, the conversation flowing easily. Amira told him about a new resident at Silver Pines, a retired music teacher who had brought his violin and filled the common room with music. And how's Daniel? Adrian asked. Doing well, but Dr. Peterson wants him to use a walker for now, just to be safe. She paused, then tilted her head. You seem distracted today. Adrian hesitated, then said, The board is questioning my commitment. Apparently having a personal life makes me less dedicated. Everyone deserves a life outside of work, she replied. Not in my world, Adrian said, then softened his tone. I'm sorry, I don't mean to complain. She studied him for a moment. Is that why you've worked so hard all these years? Because you thought you had nothing else? Partly, he admitted, but lately I've been seeing things differently. You, Daniel, the garden, it's made me realize there's more to life than quarterly reports. Her expression softened, but before either could say more, her sister Maya appeared, grinning. Don't let me interrupt your coffee date, Maya teased. It's just lunch, Amira said quickly. Maya winked at Adrian. Right. Then she waved and left. When the conversation turned back to the garden, Amira mentioned the irrigation system's constant problems. What if I help with the budget? Adrian offered. No blank checks, just numbers. She smiled faintly. That I can accept. That evening, Adrian sat in the garden's makeshift office, a desk shoved into the corner of a storage shed, reviewing expenses with Amira, Maya, and Javier, the coordinator. The irrigation upgrade would make a huge difference, Javier explained, but we're $2,000 short. Adrian suggested a community fundraiser, a garden-to-table dinner featuring local chefs and an auction. The idea caught fire instantly. By the end of the night, they had a plan. As Amira walked him to his car, she said, You had good ideas today, and you didn't once try to just write a check. I'm learning, he said. She hesitated, then added, When we first met, I judged you too quickly. I thought you were just another rich man who visited his uncle out of obligation. And now? Now I think there's more to you than I realized. She rose on her toes, kissed his cheek, and whispered, Good night, Adrian. As she walked away, Adrian touched the spot where her lips had been, feeling for the first time in years that something real was beginning. 2 days before the gala, Adrian was deep in contract reviews when his assistant announced an unexpected visitor. "Send her in," he said, only to look up and find Amira stepping into his glass-walled office. She looked slightly out of place against the skyline view, her simple dress and natural hair a stark contrast to the polished surroundings. "I was downtown for a nursing program interview," she explained. "Thought I'd stop by." "How did it go?" "I think well," she said, still scanning the office. Her eyes landed on the old fishing photo of him and Daniel. "I like that you keep this here." "A reminder of what matters," he replied. "So, what brings you here?" She hesitated. "About the gala. If the invitation's still open, I'll go with you." His eyebrows lifted. "Really? What changed your mind?" "Your uncle," she admitted. "He told me it was important to you, and I believe in the cause. Besides," she smiled faintly, "maybe I'm curious about your world." Before he could answer, the door opened without a knock. Victoria Chambers stepped inside, her smile freezing at the sight of Amira. "Sorry," Victoria said, not sounding sorry at all. "Didn't realize you had a guest." "Victoria, this is Amira Johnson," Adrian said evenly. "She'll be my guest at the gala." For a moment, Victoria's expression didn't move. "Your guest?" "That's right." "Well," Victoria said smoothly, "we'll need to adjust the head table." Then, with a final glance at Amira, she left, the door clicking a little too hard behind her. Amira exhaled slowly. She didn't seem thrilled. "Don't worry about her," Adrian said. "I want you there, Amira. That's what matters." She still looked uncertain, but after a moment she nodded. In that moment, Adrian knew two things. The gala would no longer be just another networking event, and Victoria, used to standing at his side in front of the city's elite, wouldn't take this change quietly. Somewhere between the music and the champagne, the night ahead was bound to test where his loyalties truly lay. The gala night began like 100 before. Flashing cameras, glittering gowns, polite handshakes. But this time, Adrian Cole walked the carpet with Amira on his arm, her navy gown simple yet striking, her head held high despite the stares. Inside, the music swelled, glasses clinked, and whispers followed them. Some smiled politely, others measured her like a curiosity. Adrian saw it all, and for the first time didn't care. But while Adrian was called away to speak with the governor, Victoria found her chance. Her words were sugar-coated, but the message was sharp. "You don't belong here. He's destined for someone else." When Adrian returned, Amira was gone. Hours later, he found himself at her door, telling her what he should have said long ago. That the board didn't choose his future, he did. That the richest thing he'd ever found wasn't in his bank account, but standing in front of him now. Weeks later, in the heart of the community garden, he proposed. No champagne tower, no chandeliers, just sunlight, laughter, and the people who mattered. And when she said yes, he realized he hadn't just built an empire, he'd finally built a life worth living. Because real wealth isn't counted in dollars, but in the love you give and the lives you change. And somewhere out there, another story like theirs is waiting to be told, where the heart wins over the world's expectations. So if stories like this speak to you, stay with us, because the next one might just be the one you've been waiting for.